Is this Lord of the Rings I see before me? No, this is not Lord of the Rings. What is this? An abomination. That's what it is. It's an abomination. It's part of the humiliation ritual. Oh, these trolls are just angry. They're so pressed they should go touch some grass because they want to see, Lord of the Rings as the artist wrote it, as the artist envisioned it. Oh, you guys are all far right then, huh? Far right if you don't want to see yourself replaced in stories. Yeah, challenge accepted. Click the links for Odyssey, Bit Chute, no Discord. Some spurgy SJW decided to take that down and deleted all 50 people from the Discord. But you can go on Telegram. Telegram's like the better Discord because there's no censorship. So AfroHobbits, are you istophobic for wanting to see Lord of the Rings as it was written? Yes, and that's a good thing. If you disagree with them in any way, shape, or form, they automatically label you far right. So those terms are acceptable. Anything you can do to label people far right. It's like these Lord of the Rings and these Star Wars, these cosplayer nerds. They're Hugo Boss goose steppers. Yeah, exactly. If they don't want to see, their stories absolutely subverted and destroyed, they're on the far right. Well, cool, because that just increases their number and kind of decreases your number because more people are going to want to see the authentic story as it was written. And, it's funny. There are furries who are have armbands, I'll say, but kind of nobody on the far left or the far right really wants support from the furry community. They really creep everyone out. They're just kind of in their own. There's furries, and then there's those My Little Pony people. They're really off in their own section of weirdness. I'm not sure which one is weirder. It's just something like you want physical distance, and like a wall of fire to keep you away from people who are into that. They're really, really creepy people. Anyway, so everyone who disagrees with me is literally the Austrian corporal. You don't even have to have an argument. You just call everyone the fashionable ones, which is weird because I look around and I don't see them. But they also consider the Canadians who are protesting against an authoritarian totalitarianism to be fashionable. Those anti-government authoritarian guys, those are the fascists. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. So the thing they're kind of loosely going off of, there are two other little hobbit clans, I don't know, the Harfoots or the Stoats or something, and he described them in the Silmarillion as, like, he was describing them as Mediterranean, the Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, something like that. They were a little bit more tan. But the story was set on kind of the European pantheon. So they weren't Africans. He wasn't extending that far. It was a European story. So they would have been, and there's several illustrations of them with, red hair, or light colored hair and just a little bit more tan from, Italy or something. So they're using that vague description. Like, clearly the story never envisioned anything other than a European setting. That was the, kind of loosely based things you kind of got from World War One. It's pretty much, you're stretching it to the absurd to say, oh yeah, those were the African hobbits, the AfroHobbits. No, they weren't. Nobody believes that. Just tell your own story. Oh, we can't. They literally can't create. They can't tell their own story. They can't tell something that people would pay money for. They can tell, I don't know, they probably have websites where they write like, their own SJW type of stories. But they can't get it monetized. They can't, you're not getting a lot of support for an SJW story that starts as an SJW story, which is why they do what they do with this subversion. They want the name recognition of something huge like, Lord of the Rings. It's, one of the biggest stories on Earth. So they get you with that name recognition and they give you this. And it's like, very few people see this. Guys, kind of chubby hands. And are interested in this, because anyone of any background who was into the original stories is into the original stories because it has the verisimilitude of this story setting being, loosely set, like influenced in World War I era, but also going way back before that to English fantasy. They like the stories for what they are. They don't want to see AfroHobbits. If they did, they would tell some, what do you call those stories they write, like fan fiction? Like, there are fan fiction sites, and some of them are more successful than others, but it's like, that's what this feels like. It feels like fan fiction. And is it going to sell? There's no friggin' way this is going to sell. And, it's a little bit weird that you take a specifically European story and replace it with Africans when there's a bigger market. Like, the Chinese market is huge. Why wouldn't you, if you wanted to market outside the United States, you'd market to China, right? That would be the logical conclusion. Because this is not going to sell in China. Black Panther did not do very well overseas. Or if you wanted to stay in America, you could market it to the Spanish audience, the Latino audience. They're twice the African audience. So why wouldn't you use that as your marketing ploy? Well, they're doing these things for a reason, and no, they're not doing it. They're all about the money. I hear people in the middle ground, along the left and the right, who are kind of not really looking into things. They go, companies, these corporate entities, they just want to make money. No, because if they did, they wouldn't follow up a string of woke failures, stuff like, Ghostbusters 2016, Charlie's Angels, the X-Men, the Terminator, all these remakes that have been a string of bombing movies. So you're saying that the people who are making the movies are not learning from other mistakes? You're left with the logical conclusion that they're not doing this for money. So the next conclusion is, well, why are they doing it? They're doing it for ideological reasons. Like, what are the motivations of man? Money is one of them, but ideology, religion's another one of them. This is an ideology to them, very closely akin to a religion. They're not doing this for money. You got to stop using that as an excuse. Otherwise, it's to believe that people who are not dumb people are making a series of dumb decisions. That doesn't make sense. They're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars for movies that are dealing with billion-dollar companies. So you're saying that they're consistently hiring people who are making a string of failing movies for monetary purposes? Fiscal decisions? No, these are not sound fiscal decisions. This is cultural Marxism. Anyway, first of all, the globalists don't care about telling an African story. If you wanted to, there's no shortage. It's a pretty big place. But to do that, like to tell a Henry Rider Haggard type of story, you could tell a story like the Maasai, one tribe, the Maasai versus the Asai, something that's separated by a river, and there's, the chief's going to marry one of his daughters off to some other chief, and there's, romance and intrigue and spies versus spy, and it's a distinctly African story. But the thing is, they can't do that because it's protagonists and antagonists are both the same color. And cultural Marxists won't do that because they have to make the antagonists blonde or red hair. They have to make them distinctly Northern Western European looking. And it's not just, I know it sounds a bit tinfoil hat to say that, but there's no shortage of objective evidence that you can scroll through if you want to spend a couple hours on the internet to look at these characters that have been replaced. Or you look through comics, movies, commercials, any remake, and just draw a line down a piece of paper and protagonist and antagonist and start listing physical descriptions of each one, and you quickly see the correlation is like over 90% between, light hair, light eyes, bad, and dark hair, dark eyes, good. So no, these Marxists don't want to tell an African story. They would barbecue babies in Nigeria if they thought it would get them some Instagram dopamine. They only care about the humiliation ritual. They want to take every European accomplishment and subvert it, and they usually swap in it for African characters for European ones because in their minds they view those two things as opposite ends of a spectrum. And there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the YouTube limit. They always go, the people who are further to the right always laugh at the people who are a little bit to the left of the right, or the middle of the road people who are kind of discovering. They go, oh my gosh, the left wing is a racist the whole time. Yes. Yeah. I mean, how did it take you so long to discover this? I mean, have you been asleep the past 80 years? Anyway, anything European, in Tolkien's story, it's like, or any story, it's distinctly European, so they have to subvert it and destroy it. It's like, well, they're just enriching it, making it look like the modern world is. Well, then why don't you just tell a new story? Because this already is a story. Tolkien's story wasn't great because it was set in Africa. It was great because it was set in his mind in, English fantasy and mythology. That's what made it great. You're taking it and you're swapping out all the characters that made it great because you're hoping the name recognition is going to get you some eyeballs while you tell this subverted parasitical story. And to be fair, nobody's going to watch it, but they can lose money on these stories. They know they're going to lose money on these stories, and they're making them anyway. And we're talking about tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars that's going to be either an underperformer or a loss. Like, you can see this from orbit that this is not going to do well because there's a history of bombs that come before this. So as you look at this, and anyone who's following this can go like, yeah, this is not going to perform well. So why are they doing it? Because it's not about the money to them. They're pushing, this is a religion. This is a religion, and that's probably the easiest way to understand it. This is a Euro, like Lord of the Rings. It's distinctly European, and it's also distinctly, it's a nationalist story of tribe and nation state, of the blood tribe. It must be subverted to serve the means of globalism. Tribes have histories and cultures. And there's an interview with one of the actors in there, and he's trying to explain why there's a, he goes, they're not a race of people, they're a tribe of people. So there's Asians, Africans, and Europeans, and Latinos. And it's like, well, that's not how groups of people work. That's not anthropology. That's not how human behavior. That's not how humans behave. People are their own people. They're of the people, one people, of the tribe, of the blood, of linealogies. So, I mean, you're telling a story that is anti-human nature, and people look at this and goes, oh, this is just like Pravda-level propaganda. They know this. That's why they're telling it. Because, I mean, I keep grinding the axe about globalism versus nationalism, but it's a very convenient lens to view a lot of this stuff through, because there's so much evidence to support it. It is globalism versus nationalism, but most people don't think of, like, Lord of the Rings as a nationalist story, but because they're just not thinking about it. Like, think about who the hobbits are. They are the hobbits. They are this tribe of people. They are a group with a shared history and culture and probably shared values to make themselves this one group of people. They're distinct groups of people. It would be like starting to like mix elves and which they did in the later movies. The Hobbit, I think they mixed an elf with a hobbit. It's like, so, I mean, what kind of abomination results from that? It's somebody who's, it's neither one nor the other. It's kind of, I know it's a little too base for YouTube, but just like from a storytelling perspective, it doesn't make sense. Who was that? The Stephen King movie, The Dark Tower. They did that in the movie where there's some town, and like half the town is black, and there's a third of the town is Asian, and some's Latino, and some's European. It's like they're all mixed together, and you look at the town in The Dark Tower, like, so did all these people from different parts of the world just come to this town in their generation? Because if you have a bunch of different people and you put them in a town together, after a few generations, they're all going to look alike because they're going to mate with each other. So you're saying you've got, like, one of the main characters was a Chinese lady and an African male. So you're saying that you just caught this town at the one moment in time of its very, very beginning where people met and they instantly got along and they just made the connection, but they're in the first generation. It's like, that's why the story doesn't feel authentic, because that's not how tribes work. Tribes, you're more likely to catch the town when they're at war with each other, or after 1,000 years where they all look the same. They've all interbred to be just a new tribe of something else. That's why stories like movies like The Dark Tower or movies like this don't work, because you look at it and you look at a group of, like, so these hobbits, there's like a Chinese hobbit, a Mexican hobbit, African hobbit, and an Irish hobbit. So, but they all live together, but they all are distinct groups. That doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, that's cultural Marxism. I don't know. Was this too base for YouTube? They only create, their only goal is to subvert and destroy. Like, they're going to do this with everything, to the point where, I don't know what this is premiering on. Oh, Amazon videos. You just got to get away from the mainstream and, I don't know, make sock puppet movies or something. If there's a way to crowdfund our own Hollywood, I don't see that happening because the initial investment is too great. But you don't need new movies. Like anything past, I don't know, 2010 is probably pointless anyway. It's like, well, you're just gonna have to enjoy the old stuff, I guess. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.